Smart Object Tracking is a powerful new tool within Pinnacle Studio 25 Ultimate, which uses artificial intelligence to automatically track a variety of different objects throughout a clip, so that you can effectively separate subjects or objects from the background of a clip far more efficiently than ever before. This opens up a new world of creativity and opportunity with the ability to create some stunning effects. Please see our suite of Smart Object Tracking tutorials to learn how to fix missing frames, how to add text behind objects, how to duplicate objects, and how to place objects into a new scene. Let's start with this clip, which is a young lady talking on the phone in front of a river or lake of some kind, and I want to separate her from the background in some way. I'll go to Mask at the top here, and I'll create a clip mask. I could also choose a normal mask here. It doesn't really matter which in this case, but generally a clip mask means a mask that is tied to a specific clip and will move with that clip when you change the clip's position on the timeline, whereas a normal mask on a mask track can mask multiple clips at once. So we've got our clip mask. Let's create a shape and start drawing the mask shape. And I can start with the playhead anywhere in the clip here. It shouldn't make a difference, but just for this demo, I'll start at the start of the clip. And to use the Smart Object Tracking feature, I want to make sure I've got the brush tool selected. I'm also going to turn on Smart Edge, which is really useful here, and then just draw over my subject. That looks pretty good. I'll press the checkbox to confirm my mask selection, and you can see the mask shape I've just created is shown over here. Now, here's where Smart Object Tracking comes in. I just need to use the tracking tools to automatically track the mask over time. I can track backwards or forwards, or with the button in the middle, I can track the whole clip at once. I'm also going to select low sensitivity for this clip, and I'll explain why I want to use this setting for this clip shortly. So let's try it out. Pinnacle Studio is going to run for a little while, which varies based on how many frames you're tracking and how large your clip is. My clip here is 4K, so it takes a bit longer. If you find these tracking buttons are grayed out, that means that the artificial intelligence object detection hasn't recognized any object in your mask. So you can either redraw your mask and try again, or try masking a different clip. But basically, the algorithm is trained to look for a whole load of different objects, whether that's faces or human bodies, different animals or cars or everyday objects, loads of things that are too numerous to mention, so you should be able to track the object you want to track. And then, once the tracking is done, we have this yellow bar. This shows which frames have been auto-tracked for you, and hopefully you'll have a solid yellow bar all the way along your clip here. If there's any gaps in this yellow bar, that means that the tracking has failed at that point, and you could try rerunning the tracking at a lower tracking sensitivity, or you could fix individual frames with the modify or replace options. In my case, it seems to have tracked my subject pretty well. But if you're having trouble, please see the tutorial on how to fix missing frames, for examples of how to fix incomplete mask tracking. So now that I have my subject masked, what can I do with it? There's a bunch of options in the Functions tab. I can put effects on either the mask, everything inside the red line, or I can also put effects on the matte, which is everything outside of the mask. If I wanted my subject to be brighter, I just select color correction for the mask, and I'll increase the exposure, and add a bit of vibrance. This is a subtle effect, but it works really well. Let's make it more extreme. I'll add color correction to the matte as well. But I'll reduce the saturation to make my subject pop even more. I'll switch back to the timeline to check it out. Looks good. Let's try something else. Say I want to increase the blur in the background to simulate a shallower depth of field. I'll switch out my effect in the matte to the blur effect. I'll change the blur amount a bit, and I can control this weird fringe around the edges of the mask with feathering. I'll have Detect Edge on to help it out, and put feather at about 6 maybe? Yeah, that looks good. Feather's really good at smoothing out any imperfections that you might have in the mask. But what if we wanted to get rid of the background entirely? Things get a little more complicated, but we can do it. Let's use the fill effect on the matte. And then I'll color pick from the color of the sky just outside the mask. This works pretty well, but replacing the background entirely does make the imperfections of the mask a bit more noticeable. I can feather the effects again. This time I'll go for a really close feather of about 2, with detect edge not enabled this time. So let's play this back to see our subject completely separated from her background. Looks pretty good. By the way, you can try out the difference between detect edge on or off by cranking up the feather to maybe 20. And with detect edge on, the feather will cut into the matte. But with detect edge off, it will tend to feather the other way by cutting into the mask. This is why background replacements will generally need a very low feather just to soften the mask or matte a little. For further tips and tricks with Smart Object Tracking, including how to add text into a scene, how to place masked objects into a new scene, and how to duplicate objects, be sure to see our other Smart Object Tracking tutorials. Happy editing!